Good evening, everyone. This is Vibha Nashin, and I'm doing a reading from the book Messages from the Masters by Dr. Brian Weiss. Today I'm reading from chapter 8. This is part 2 of chapter 8, Rejecting Violence and Hatred. We have no right to abruptly halt people's lives before they have lived out their karma. We have no right. They will suffer great retribution if we let them live. When they die and go to the next dimension, they will suffer there. They will be left in a very restless state. They will have no peace. And they will be sent back, but their lives will be very hard. And they will have to make up to those people that they hurt for the injustices that they did against them. Only God can punish them, not us. They will be punished. Violence is much more than just inflicting physical injury on another. Some forms of violence can be more devastating than the physical variety. It can be very subtle. Separating into us and them is an act of violence. Focusing on the differences between people rather than our commonality inevitably leads to violence sooner or later. We fear the other. We project our self hatred, our failures, and our faults onto them. We blame them for our problems rather than looking within ourselves. We attempt to solve our problems by fixing them, often with violence. Thus, country clubs with restricted memberships are violent places. It does not matter that the members wield no more than a golf club on a beautiful summer day on a tree lined fairway. There is violence afoot. There is we and them, all the others. The others are not like us. You cannot trust them. They are dangerous and to be feared. I have heard that when the poet Maya Angelou hears a prejudiced remark against any group, she immediately and firmly says, "Stop it." You will hear her majestic voice across a crowded room at a dinner party if she overhears a bigoted comment, story, or joke. This is a wonderful technique. If we all did the same, bigotry and prejudice would diminish and hopefully fade away. But to say stop it requires great courage. We will have to command our families, friends, peers, bosses, and strangers to cease their angry behavior. Although it may seem difficult, remember that we are swimming upstream against the current of love when we separate others as different. Love tells us that we are all connected, that we are all equal, that we all are same. You do not need to believe in reincarnation for past life therapy to work. If you wish, you can believe the whole thing is metaphor. The imagery is rich, detailed, and therapeutic, whatever you believe. In the spring of 1996, I was on the Maury Povich show. Prior to the live taping of the show, I regressed several people while the cameras filmed their experiences. One of these people was Jim, a musician in his late 40s who was also a veteran of the war in Vietnam. He had been drafted unwillingly and he hated the prospect of killing. But he had had no choice and was compelled to be a soldier in this war. I had never met Jim until just before this regression. I took a brief history, explained what we would be doing, and apologized for the intrusion of the television cameras and their lights. He told me that he had never been hypnotized before and that he had no personal experiences with past lives. but he was willing to try. Within a few minutes, Jim was in a deep hypnotic trance and began to experience a powerful past life scene. He was not at all distracted by the cameras or crew. I am with an attachment of soldiers, horse soldiers. We are in Dakotas, someplace. We have, there are many Indians and we are being slaughtered. And I'm trying to convince my mates that we are dying with honor. But we are not. Tears were now streaming from his eyes. His grief and sadness were palpable. There's Gary, Jim added, a beautiful smile temporarily piercing the sadness. Gary is one of his closest friends in Jim's current life. You recognize him? I asked. Yes, my friend Gary. Is he one of you there? Yes. Again the smile, yet the tears continued to fall. It's okay, I added, trying to assuage his grief. We come around with the same people. Do you survive this? No. What happens to you? They take my hair. What do you see? Jim's voice became even sadder. Terrible carnage. Oh, the things we do. I took him away from his death in that lifetime. And now, review from the higher perspective. What did you learn from that experience, from that life? He was silent for a few moments. I observed his eyes moving back and forth, and he were as if he were scanning images under his closed eyelids. Jim later told me that he was seeing a panorama of past life scenes, in which the horrors of war and unbridled violence were displayed to him. He was a participant in all of these episodes, sometimes a victim, sometimes as slayer, sometimes as bereaved survivor. He sat motionless. I repeated my question. Reviewing that lifetime from the higher perspective, what did you learn? What were the lessons? With teary eyed and in the softest voice, Jim answered, and I felt chills as I listened to his words. That that life is holy, and there is no reason ever to kill. As Jim echoed the message Catherine had delivered from the Masters 15 years earlier, my mind drifted back to him as a 19-year-old recruit objecting to the burgeoning war in Vietnam and to his discomfort in being a part of this war. His was not a political or ideological objection. He must have remembered at some deep emotional level what he so tragically experienced in the Indian wars of the late 19th century. Life is holy, and there is no reason ever to kill. Chapter 9. Finding the Light. For now, I just feel peace. It's a time of comfort. The party must be comforted. The soul. The soul finds peace here. You leave all the bodily pains behind you. Your soul is peaceful and serene. It's a wonderful feeling. Wonderful, like the sun is always shining on you. The light is so brilliant. Everything comes from the light. Energy comes from this light. Our soul immediately goes there. It almost like a magnetic force that we are attracted to. It's wonderful. It's like a power source. It knows how to heal. One of the most consistent findings in the research of near death experiences is the experiencer's perception of a beautiful and comforting light. This light is not some neurochemical event occurring in an injured brain, but rather a wonderful glimpse into the world beyond. Often, a loved relative who has previously died or a spiritual being is present at light, offering advice, knowledge, and profound love. The person often becomes aware of details and events of which he or she had no previous knowledge. People have been told by their deceased loved ones where family jewels have been hidden and as yet undiscovered, where wills have been stored, and many other hidden facts. Later, after they have recovered from their illness or injury, they have found the articles confirming the accuracy of information received while they were unconscious or in a coma. A light caused by brain injury, as critics of the near death experience have sometimes claimed, could not provide such precise validation. Although certain details of the near death experience may change from culture to culture, the perception of this beautiful light seems to be a universal phenomenon. In the United States, people undergoing an NDE or near death experience often describe traversing a tunnel in order to reach the light. In Japan, crossing over a river or body of water to reach the light is a more common description. Nevertheless, whether moving through a tunnel or crossing a river, or traveling in any other manner, the light is a constant finding. So, too, is the sensation that accompanies it. There is peace and comfort at the light. After conducting an intense 2-day workshop in which many healthcare professionals were participating, I received a letter from one of the professionals who had attended. She was thanking me for helping her and others to experience the beautiful light, the same light. I believe that is seen and felt by people during the near death experience or after death experience. Of course, people can touch this light in meditative or hypnotic states, in dreams, in spontaneous mystical experience, and in many other ways. She is now 36 years old, but her first experience with the light, still etched sharply in her memory, occurred only when she was 14. She wanted to share this with me, and I want to let you hear her words also, because her description is classical, accurate, and straightforward. She was educated in a Catholic school in Latin America. Spanish is her primary language, although her letter is written in English. I never knew about near or after death experiences, life before life, and less about past lives. I never imagined that in ninth grade I would have something to tell about it. During a spiritual retreat that her entire school was attending, a priest taught them a few meditation and visualization techniques. He first had the group, which was lying on the floor, slow down their breathing. He then had them visualize themselves in a beautiful field filled with flowers. At this point, the young woman's experience began to differ, becoming independent of the priest's gentle instructions. Birds were singing and we were enjoying our surroundings. We were instructed by the priest's sweet voice to continue our walk through the field, but I found myself wrinkling my frown. I could no longer follow the priest's descriptions. I tried for 3 times, and instead of being able to continue my walk, I always reached a well. I fell I felt the priest's voice farther and farther. Meanwhile, it was still describing a field without a well. My body grew loose and I surrendered. At the same time, I saw myself bending over to see what was inside the well, but I fell into it. Then it was no longer a well, but a tunnel. I had a little lamp in my right hand. I started walking through the tunnel. All was obscure except for the soft light of my lamp. After a while, I noted that the tunnel was curving slightly to the left, and then tiny light rays began to appear as I became closer. They grew large and larger at each step of mine. I wanted fervently to see what was there. I reached the corner and then I saw it. Oh God, I was going to dismay. There was it, the most precious, brilliant, and largest light I have ever seen. It is round and giant, incandescent like the sun, but pure white. It seems solid, but at the same time translucent. How can it be? I wrote these few lines in present time because my soul knows this precious light exists, has existed always for all of us. I was afraid for a while, but also irresistibly attracted by the light. Keeping my little lamp, I tried to penetrate the giant light in front of me, agitating its glamorous beams. I must be inside it and know what was behind it. I wanted to be part of it. I could identify a masculine polarity in the light environment. I was about to get in when suddenly I heard a strong voice in my mind that told me, "No, you can't trespass this light." I still remember the energy of the voice. It was a masculine, young voice, but there was nobody visible. There was an invisible barrier that kept me outside the light. Immediately to the voice, I felt a strong push in my chest, which made me go backwards, flying in circles through the tunnel. Suddenly, the tunnel became the well again, and then my fall was upwards. When I got out, flying rapidly from the well, I saw the sky and the field again, and in that moment I felt a blow inside my body, a sharp one, as if my soul had made a sudden arrival. It returned because it was not allowed to trespass the light. At this point, she opened her eyes. Surprisingly, the priest was still describing the field of flowers, and the students were still calm with closed eyes. Nobody noted my arrival. She was too anxious and moved by her experience to tell anyone. For many years, she kept her entire experience with the light a very private secret. 12 years later, she read a newspaper article describing the near death experience of a 4-year-old girl. She describes reading the article and becoming overwhelmed with joy. She realized that the girl could trespass the light because she had, for a moment, died. I cried a lot. I was no longer lonely. The light was not a fantasy. I have never felt the love, peace, and divinity of my light again. There is nothing comparable to it in our physical world. I miss it. Now, this woman works with dying patients in a hospital, helping them to make their transitions into the spiritual world comforting and reassuring them because of her own spiritual experiences. Interestingly, she has also noticed many of the same phenomena as my younger brother Peter and his wife Barbara, who are oncologists and whose experience with their dying patients are described in Through Time into Healing, my book. She continues, I have the opportunity to be in the company of dying patients. They see their beloved parents or members of their family receiving them in their dimension or coming for them. These patients have described to me their visions and experience before leaving. They are happy when they see their mother or father or a beautiful being smiling at them. I know they will enjoy their light. I need and people need to know more about how to manage and help people in the dying process because there is light. From the light we came and to the light we will go. By the love and experience and happiness that I felt from my light and perceived in my patients, I know love does not end with death. And she is correct. The light and love really never die. They are intimately and eternally entwined. Based on the knowledge I have gleaned from the masters, the after death experience is very similar. We still go to the light and receive the identical comfort, the same love, the soothing peace. The only difference is what happens next. In the NDE, the person is returned to his or her physical body. In the ADE, which is after death experience, the soul moves on, continuing to learn on the other side. In heaven, until returning here, is a baby's body, incarnating once again in the physical state, if that is necessary or chosen. Lately, there have been a few reports about people who have experienced negative NDEs. In investigating this, I have found that sometimes the so called negative NDE is not an actual NDE. Instead, the person who is injured has experienced a fluctuating level of consciousness during the trauma. He or she may become dimly aware of the actual events taking place at a level of partial conscious awareness. I'm not saying that there is no such thing as negative NDE, just that there are few cases reported and that some of these cases are not valid. For example, I regressed a policeman who had been injured in a car accident while on duty. He described a terrible NDE in which his body had been pushed and probed and pierced by malevolent beings. In truth, as the regression proved, he had partially awakened while being transported by the ambulance to the hospital emergency room. During the trip, the paramedics were administering emergency medical treatment, inserting intravenous lines for fluid replacement, injecting necessary medications, monitoring blood pressure, creating an airway to assist his breathing, and so on. In actuality, the malevolent beings were the emergency personnel who saved his life. When you find the light, you find peace, comfort, and love. There is nothing negative about such a beautiful experience. I have never found hell, only different levels of ignorance. The more ignorance, the less light. Evil is a profound ignorance and a nearly complete absence of light. It is rare to discover famous people or people of highly prominent stature during regressions to past life. Henry was an exception. In his current life, he is a professor of engineering at a large Midwestern university. Very logical and rational in his thinking and actions. He had come to my workshop somewhat reluctantly, more to keep his wife company than to participate actively. As destiny would dictate, he now found himself in front of 200 people, an ambivalent volunteer for an individual regression. In some of the earlier group exercises, he had had some vivid childhood memories filled with detail and emotions. He was willing to explore even further. Henry reached a depth of hypnosis that most do not reach. I remembered about never judging a book by its cover. Even engineers could allow themselves to go under deeply. He went so deep that afterwards he experienced amnesia for the entire regression. With prompting, the memories he experienced returned to some extent. Fortunately, the entire regression was taped so that afterwards he could re experience everything. His childhood memories were again filled with many details. Henry's memories under hypnosis were particularly vivid and profound. At first, I took him back to the age of 3 when his mother scolded him for darting into the street after a ball. He had almost been struck by a passing car. He could very acutely feel her anger and her relief, and he remembered his actions to her conflicting emotions. Then we moved into a past life, and his memories flooded back to him as he sat completely focused and in a deep trance, oblivious to the large audience, captivated by his recall. He was a general in the army of Rome. Do you become aware of something? I asked, after bringing him into state from which memories of past life can emerge. Yes, I am I'm in a war. I'm in a fight. I It looks like a Roman centurion. I'm wearing the outfit of a general. And I'm with my men in the fight, and I have a chariot driver and a chariot, and we are in the heat of battle, and I'm throwing spears and killing people. And I'm directing the battle. We are driving this group of people, another army. It looks like a German army. Looks like a North Country army. We are driving them into a river, and then there is a steep wall on the other side of the river. Henry did not need any prompting or questions from me. He continued to talk, like an officer, about the strategy of the battle. It looks like we are going to take the day very well. I'm wearing a suit of armor. The hat is bronze and has a plume. There's a faceplate on the helmet. I have a breastplate made of metal, and I have a short dress like armor that comes from my waist and goes about halfway to the knees. As I'm throwing the spears, I'm aware that someone has thrown one at me, and I'm not afraid, he added with some surprise at his lack of fear. And it hits me right here, he elaborated, pointing at his lower right abdomen. And I have this new metal in my armor, and I'm not afraid of spear points made of rocks and just sharpened points. My armor is way too strong. After that, I gave the chariot. We moved to the rear because we didn't have to be in the battle anymore, and we let the battle continue. We watched it from the hill, safely. Augustus wants the generals to enter the battle but not stay with the battle, especially if we are winning big. He now became silent. Clearly, the battle was being won. I decided to move him ahead in time. I directed him to go to the end of that lifetime. The silence continued for a few more moments, and then he began to speak again. I am I'm a rich man, even though I started out just a poor boy. But I am a rich man and I have land and I see lots of columns and I'm in the Senate. I wear a robe with a purple stripe. I'm a senator. So you have power? I asked. Yes, yes, I do have some power, but not as much as Caesar. Mainly, I'm retired now and I don't fight anymore. I just mainly stay on my land in Sicily and just farming and raising sheep. And I see Caesar every once in a while when comes to Cyprus. And you are ready to leave that time, or is there more? I asked. I see myself dying. I'm a very old man and I'm on a hard bed like surface. And I can see people around me hurrying, hurrying, hurrying. And I look up with my eyes and my head stays on the bed and I see my wife. And then I die. He grew silent. What do you see become aware of next? I inquired. I see I see myself, I'm a young man again. I see myself looking down at the room. I'm pleased. I'm happy and pleased, and I can see myself. And there is a call, or someone is calling me, and there shines a bright a yellow light very strong. I can't look into the light, but there is a voice in the light calling me. So I walk into the light. Being in the light feels very nice, feels like warm energy all around your body. It feels very comfortable, feels like the ideal climate. I'm still wearing my senator's robe, but I'm young. I'm young again. Once more he paused. Is there anything more that you can tell us from the state? I asked. What happens next? I don't know. I don't know. This is the last that I can remember right now. I brought Henry out of this deep trance. How do you feel? I asked. I feel good. Are we going to start? The last conscious memory Henry had was my beginning to hypnotize him about 45 minutes earlier. A week after his experience, a close friend of Henry's told me that Henry was feeling wonderful, that his regression had brought him more peace and happiness than he had ever felt before, at least in this life. I smiled. So many fears disappear when you can so directly and so deeply be reminded of your divinity, of your immortality. Henry had no doubt that he had lived many centuries ago in Rome. Yet, even more than the memories of our past lifetimes, when one remembers the beautiful light we encounter after we leave our physical bodies, not only do our fears vanish, but a sense of transcendent joy and comfort almost overwhelms us. This is such a loving light. It nourishes our souls. Henry had felt the light. His light was yellow. Sometimes I hear the light described as golden, sometimes as indescribable as all colors simultaneously, but always as comforting and loving. Death is not what most of us believe. Death is the shedding of the physical body as the immortal soul progresses to the other side. In this sense, there is no death, only life and love. The light is one more manifestation of this universal, timeless, all encompassing love. Researchers into the NDE, such as Dr. Raymond Moody and Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, often describe a life review session. One or more several wise and loving beings assist you in reviewing the events in your life. particular interest is paid to your relationships, how you dealt with others. From my research with patients remembering their deaths in previous lifetimes, I find that the death experience is very much the same for all of them. The life review is done in a loving way without judgment and criticism. However, you feel emotions deeply, both yours and the other person's, and thus you learn at a profound level. For example, if you genuinely helped another person in a time of need, you feel that person's gratitude and love coming back to you. But if you hurt or injured others emotionally or physically, you experience their anger as well as their hurt. What a wonderful learning opportunity. Afterwards, you and your committee, which is comprised of the loving guides, masters, angels, and others who have helped to guide you over eons of time, plan your next life so that you can rectify the wrongs you have done. We are always growing and learning. When you no longer need to reincarnate, when you have learned all your lessons and cleared all debts, then you are given a choice. You can return voluntarily in order to help humankind in loving service, or you can stay on the other side helping from that state. In both cases, you continue to progress along the heavenly dimensions. This brings me to the end of today's reading. We will start with another topic from chapter 8, which are other dimensions. It's going to be very interesting this time. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you tomorrow somewhere around 7 o'clock. Till that time, this is Vibhan Ashin signing off. Take care. Good night.